So today it's time to talk about entrepreneurship. Usually we set these New Year's resolutions. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But at some point, maybe after 2 days, so this is the day we realized, okay, maybe this is too much. I can't do it, but maybe you can. And today I'm gonna have, and finally this day arrived because I already had some years ago one of the brothers, and today I managed to get them both. I remember that the first time it was the live was in Spanish, and I asked Jeffrey, "Do you think that Bryan one day will want to join us?" And he said, "I think he will, but the thing is, maybe we need to speak English." So meanwhile, I didn't took classes, but I managed to improve my English. So this is kind of my entrepreneur way to do things. And we are going to talk about their new book, and maybe we can bring some of their other books because they have lots of them. Best-selling authors. They are the amazing Eisenberg brothers. Let me see if they are there. Hello.
We are here.
How you doing?
Welcome. First of all, thank you so much. Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining again. Bryan, thank you so much for joining for the first time. And let me share this with you. Since I got this Amazon live thing, I thought you should come to my show because you have so many insights about Amazon. Maybe today we can bring also the Be Like Amazon book because I think you have there some amazing insights, not just about Amazon, but also about how to make this customer oriented business work. Because I think sometimes people, and maybe we can talk about this later, because some gurus they have some kind of crazy ideas that for me doesn't resonate that much. But first we're going to talk about this rice and beans millionaire, if you don't mind, and introduce yourself for a little, and then we can jump into the conversation. Is that okay?
Sure. So I'm Jeffrey Eisenberg. I'm the one with the hat, so you'll be able to remember that today. That's my little brother and business partner. Go ahead, Bryan. Say hello.
I'm Bryan Eisenberg, his little brother. Yeah,
Very little.
we've written 8 books to clarify for Marco and your audience. Eight books, starting with this little known number. Okay, and I'm gonna teach you the 30-second lesson about entrepreneurship and a book. You ready for this one?
Okay, let's do this.
This is 2000. Our mentor, Roy Williams, keeps telling us, we should have a book because we found him by reading his book on a Barnes & Nobles. I read it right there in the store. I handed it to Jeffrey. Jeffrey called up, met him, and it's changed, our careers in so many ways. Anyway, a few weeks later, we're at our friend Larry Chase's house. And Larry Chase, for those of you who've been on the internet a very long time, he had one of the first 2 internet marketing newsletters, okay, on the web. Like that was it. Like if you wanted to find a resource about internet marketing, Larry's newsletter was the place. Him and Ralph Wilson. And we're at a party at Larry Chase's house, okay. And I don't know if you've ever been to New York or not, but he had his balcony. It was underneath the Brooklyn Bridge, so it's iconic. Great little party. We're meeting amazing people. And at the end of the night, we're getting ready to leave. And Larry stops and says, "Hold on. Let me get you my $35 business card."
I don't think I have the book here, Bryan. It's just too old.
Yeah, I've got it here somewhere too, because it is that kind
I think
of
it's in a box, but it's this thing, right? It's a book.
But that's what his publisher would charge him for them. But to give them out, it would cost him $35. It was crazy. And so Jeffrey and I went back and we started thinking about this on the drive home from Manhattan that night back to Brooklyn. And we said, okay, we need to write a book. And we're like, okay, if we're going to think about it like a business card, how much are we willing to give away if it costs us in a business card? So we self-published this first book, Persuasive Online Copywriting. And that book set up almost everything else. People want to know, well, how do you become well known as an expert? Jeffrey and I, when we started,
it was about $2, by the way. Just so
yeah,
you know,
it was under $2 it cost us.
Just so you know how cheap we really are.
we had filed bankruptcy just a couple of years prior to that. We had no money. I mean, Dad was paying for groceries. Okay. And okay, if we can't do much else, right? You can't build, like, we didn't have anything to do anything with. We're like, okay, we can write. And so we started writing on forums. We started building an audience. We started, getting invited to speak on, to write on ClickSee. We started getting, invited to speak places. And then we published the first book. And that led to the next one, the next one. It's just that daily consistency of publishing and then building that trust and authority with this first book. We had seen copies of this book, okay, on Amazon used, because we stopped printing it years ago, for over $1,300.
Woo.
We didn't get a cut of that, by the way, unfortunately.
And by the way, was it just before New Year's we had somebody on LinkedIn tell us that they reread the book?
Yeah.
And they posted it on LinkedIn. They had just reread the book after so many years, and they were still excited by it. So books stay out there. They have a long life.
Absolutely. And well, you just gave me the clue to something which is important. And I've read this somewhere in the book about trust and how important it is, for instance, when we talk about a mainly service-oriented business, how important it is to be trust. And we have this thing, because I think this is kind of hard to juggle, which is, when should I start selling? And when does it stop to kind of giving away trust? Because it's hard to juggle. Your thoughts on this?
I'm going to let Jeffrey go into it a little bit deeper, but in Be Like Amazon, there's a line there that we quote Jeff Bezos when he had to put the reviews on the website, and he was trying to push for it, and the publishers wouldn't let him. And he corrected them and told them, said, you don't understand. We're not in the business of selling books. We're in the business of helping people buy books. And you think about that from a trust perspective. And books are relatively easy to sell compared to most other things, right? Every copy of Be Like Amazon is just like every other copy of Be Like Amazon. It's got an ISBN code. It's got, a descriptor. It's got the same testimonials. Everyone's the same. That's easy. But now you're talking about a service business. And this is why it was also so important for us to in the Rice and Beans Millionaire, to not only talk about high-tech businesses and influencers and YouTube stars, but also talk about guys who pick up garbage as a business, right? Because it is the same elements. It is the same pieces of trust. And, we have a new startup that we've been working on, where we've been helping the business owners of home services companies, right? The people who come into your house and fix your air conditioning, your plumber, or your electrician. Jeffrey speaks with a lot of them, and I think he could probably touch to why that trust is so important, even on that level as well.
So I guess you're handing it over to me. Is that what you're saying? So
Right there.
I'm going to define sales in a different way than what you normally think about. Okay. Sales is a transfer of confidence, right? Because we've all been in that situation where it wasn't the right time, right? Or just weren't sure. And then all of a sudden, one day you were sure and it was the right time. And the difference was that you were confident, right? That you took that decision. So whether it's a physical product, content product, or a service, right? You're always dealing with this idea, is it the right thing? Because we all have this fear of doing the wrong thing, right? cognitive dissonance, right? We feel like we're scared that we're going to be ripped off. We're scared that we're going to be humiliated. We're scared that we're going to be disappointed, right? All these things are real possibilities, and we've all spent money and felt that way, right? So what we're trying to do is build confidence, right? So it's funny when Bryan was talking before about, you know, the stuff that we were doing in 1998, 1999, 2000, you know, and we were doing content marketing before people called it content marketing, right? But we were doing the same. It's not like when people hear that, they say, "Oh, are you saying you invented content?" No. Content marketing, that started, you know, like depending on when you think that content started, right? Actual content. So people have always needed to trust. So in a service business, the essential thing that you have to ask is, have you earned people's trust? Right. So, you know, it's generally, if you think it's time to sell, it's probably too early. I'm answering your question, Marco, right? It's probably too early. You probably haven't done enough, right? I'm sure we've missed many consulting sales, not that we're hurting for it, but over the years, people have come to us and they've asked us questions and they want to know if we can hire us. And they're always kind of surprised that we don't name a price and we never ask them to hire us. And the reason is because if I'm talking to you on the phone, I'm happy to give you some advice. You have my attention. I'm going to tell you whatever it is I can tell you. And then it's your responsibility to ask me if you'd like us to work with you, right? And so this is just from a service point of view. We've always had that point of view that it's too early. So
yeah, I think to sum it up, you first have to serve your community before they serve you.
Makes sense. Yes. Perfect. And this will take me to another point in the book that caught my eye, because we are in an era where it's easy to become, it's kind of easy to turn famous, even though it's different than, for instance, it was in the 80s, because we had kind of a narrowed audience, a couple of, well, here in Portugal, we had a couple of TV channels. I think in America, you have a little bit more. But the thing is, today we have these little bubbles where it's a little bit easier to become famous, to turn into a famous person. But it's being famous, or by being famous, this means that you will turn successful in your business, for instance. Because I remember you mentioned in the book someone who had an amazing, a huge, a strong personal brand, but somehow he wanted to be more kind of a strong business brand instead of personal brand. I don't know if it's the right thing, or it makes sense. It was your intention, but the thing is, and we listen to so many people talking about personal brand, be famous, being an influencer, but then, is this the right thing? Is this the right way? Should we be famous to be successful, or how can we define success? For instance,
I think it's a great question, and you know, it comes back to something I actually posted yesterday. You know, there was a study, and they asked kids what their number one career path is right now, what their choices would be, and their number one is to be an influencer. Okay,
YouTuber or TikToker.
yeah, or YouTuber, right? And I think that's great. You know, and you know, to talk about like one of the stories inside the book, you know, my good friend Amanda Russell, right, has a book called, you know, about influence. There's a difference between famous and being influential. Okay. Being influential means you can change the way people think of things. Now, look, if you're friends with Warren Buffett, okay, you may not be famous, but you probably have some influence over your friends about what stocks they purchase, right? Or how the market's going. There's an influence there. The problem is we confuse oftentimes being famous, having people's attention, okay, and attention in maybe one category. Like, that kid this year who became famous for the Corn song, okay, he's famous. He's not necessarily going to be an influencer. And I think when you don't understand the difference between the two, and that is about trust, that is about building authority, right? Now, everybody can be an influencer over somebody. Not everybody can be famous because that requires skills of capturing attention. But when you start putting them all together, that's when you can start really seeing success.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, any thoughts on this?
No, I think Bryan summed it up. I have strong thoughts, and again, this is going to get this would just demonstrate a bias of me being old at this point, right? I've watched lots of things already come and go, and this will also come and go. So I remember when I remember before there was Google, right? And I remember where people, knew how to get you to the top of the search engines, but what they meant was Alta Vista, Yahoo, or those kind of things, right? And so there was always a time where you could get people's attention, right, less expensively, right? And then there was a time where you could run ads. I mean, seriously, you could run ads. Okay.
For a penny, a nickel,
and
a quarter.
for 5 cents, it was a lot of money, right? And so we met people who made tens of millions of dollars doing that, right? And then that stopped, right? And so everything becomes more competitive. And what's really what's happening is that if you're 18 years old today, okay, and you want to be an influencer, do it quickly. This is there's a window closing of time where you can get attention still on YouTube or TikTok. They don't allow the amateurs to be on it too long, right? Eventually, it takes much bigger money, much bigger effort, much better connections. Am I making sense, right? So, if this is something you want to do and you think that you're going to do that you have time, you don't have time. This is probably the last gasp of relatively inexpensive fame.
And to tie that in, just, there are cycles, and we've seen this since the internet first started. Everything starts with the word first, and then we see people explode through there. Then come the images. So you think about it, right? What was the first thing? We had Twitter and we had Facebook, and we could put little status things. Then we start adding images. That went to Instagram. Okay. This happened early internet phases too. And then all of a sudden you get to video. Video is the last medium that we capture. Okay. Everyone wants to dream that 3D is going to be the thing, and virtual reality. It may eventually get there. I don't see it anytime early, but video is that last thing. And so, okay, now everybody can do video. So if I have so much, how do I stand out? Well, it's going to be in the production. It's going to be in the talent, right? And eventually that's what's going to draw all the attention, not everybody doing it. It just can't work for a very long time.
Absolutely. That's the thing. And it just made me think about two of the important topics you covered in the book. One, it's more explicit. The other one, you should pay attention to. One is the famous 50% rule, which you kind of flip it the thing, because we hear all the time, everything is changing so fast. Oh my God. Oh, it's hard to set strategy because everything is changing. I believe I'm a believer in that 50% rule, which is important. And the second thing that you cover in the book, and I think this is kind of a metaphor, but I think that's the point about the networking. the people you know that could help you with different skills, with different knowledge, also providing you feedback. And I'm thinking about Bob and those feedbacks after the games.
Yep.
So, can you talk a little bit about, and you can make choose the order about this 50% rule and also the importance even today, because we think this is easier and it's this that six steps of distance. Maybe today it's a little bit shorter, but it's important as well. It's
Yeah,
up to you.
I'm gonna let Jeffrey cover the first rule about change and how to manage that. And I think, you know, we learned a great lesson when we were consulting for Google, and you know, one of the main leaders there, you know, he had a phrase, and I'll let Jeffrey share that story, and then when he's done, I'll come back to talk about the network side of it.
I wish I could pop the picture up. If we had known, I would have, because I know that I still have that picture. So we worked for a little over a year with Google AdWords as their AdWords consultants. So we were helping them to grow beyond, right? And so I can't talk too much about what we were doing there, but one of the interesting things is the head of the division, that the vice president, had in his office a guy who had sent him a CD, okay, with a check, right? And he said, please put this on AdWords. Okay, now we're talking about probably 2014, 2015, right? So it's about 5 years ago, right? And he just wanted to remind people that this is what people were actually up to in the real world. So, you know, today I had to go stream on this, and who could imagine that I couldn't do that on my iPad, right? So for whatever reason, technology disappointed me, right? But I tend to stay relatively current. I'm, you know, relatively current. I think all of us, and most of the people who are probably watching this are relatively current. But we have to remember that that, you know, here in the U.S., where we have a highly developed e-commerce, right? It's still only 15% of the market. Under 15% of the market, right? So 85% of people, they still want to go to a store, do this. I mean, I live on Amazon, right? I mean, I have dozens of boxes that come per week. I can't imagine going to a store if I don't have to, right? You have to almost hold a gun to my head to go to the store. But that's the reality for most people. They after the pandemic, right? People rush back to the stores. They love it, right? So first, things change. Nothing changes as quickly as what you think, right? Whenever you say, "Oh, this changes everything," okay, add that plus 15 or 20 years, right? And I think that's the number that it actually takes. My wife is the last of 10 children, right? So she's the youngest of 10. And on New Year's Day, they had a get together where they used my video conferencing service, and I refused to be involved in the setup. Okay, but she decided that she would take 90 minutes, an hour and a half beforehand to get all of them on. Okay, now 9 of them tried. Okay, 6 of them finally made it. 1 of them was able to join by phone. So 7. 2 were simply unable to overcome it. We are in the year 2023. And I just want to remind everybody, right? 2023. Okay. And so I don't know. I think I started using things like GoToMeeting and WebEx.
That were
in
both former clients.
2002, so 20 years. It's about 20 years, right? Maybe a little bit less. And we still have people who can't actually figure out how to use those things. So hold your horses, okay? Don't get so excited, right? There's still business to be done. And people want to change their entire strategies, their worldviews based on technology, right? Technology is just a different way to implement successful tactics. Your business strategies still have to be based on some fundamental things. And I'll let Bryan take it, because I've basically fed him the instead of looking back 10 years, let's look forward. Go ahead, Bryan.
Well, and it comes back to what Sajak used to tell us all the time, right? One of the principles he learned at Google was imagine that you're constantly walking on quicksand. Okay? Like, yes, it feels kind of safe, but at any moment it's going to be a little more slippery, but it's going to be a slow sink. Things change slower, but they're always changing. And I think that's an important aspect to realize. So we should look for change. Don't get me wrong, because change oftentimes brings opportunity, but you have to be careful, right? Not to over invest in it, right? And get so caught up in the shiny object, right? That you miss those fundamentals. Okay. And coming back to what we mentioned earlier, right? The guy who posted the picture of the book, there's a chapter here in Persuasive Online Copywriting talking about, writing to the meat, right? Versus the vegetables. I forgot the exact title of the chapter. And I told him, I said, it's funny you wrote that, because I obviously was not thinking about the book Persuasive Online Copywriting when I wrote this part in the Rice and Beans Millionaire. I talk about his success strategies.
But the phrase is talk to the dog in the language of the dog, right? About what's in the heart of the dog. Dogs want to talk about meat. And mine might want to talk about cheese too, but that's because he's spoiled. But basically, right, you want to talk to your dog about meat, because that's what excites them. That's what gets them going, right?
That's what gets their attention. That's what gets their interest. That's what gets them salivating, right? That's what gets them sitting, jumping, whatever you ask them to do. And it's the same here. The problem is, in the last 50 years, okay, all these sales trainers have gone out there and says, well, you got to sell the sizzle, not the steak. Yes, sometimes, but the majority of people really just want, as you showed earlier, right, in Portugal, you ask for a steak, it's that big, okay? You want the meat. You want to be satisfied. You want, even more inside, you want to be delighted with the amount of food. You don't want to go away from the meal saying, man, that was delicious, but I'm still hungry. I'm gonna go to the burger place down the block to get some food. Okay. And I think so many people miss that, because at our core, we want the meat, right? We want to be absolutely satisfied with what we have. And what Ricky did in his business was focus in on making sure people were satisfied, more than full. Because if you're more than full, you're going to walk around the day, man, I was full.
Yeah,
okay?
I feel that feeling.
And you know what? People are saying, well, what'd you have? And word of mouth gets triggered every single time.
And this is a consistent thing, right? I'm going to go back to be like Amazon for a moment. But Jeff Bezos says, people always ask me, okay, what's changed over the last 10 years? Well, the way Jeff Bezos says, it's kind of like a stupid question. The right question would be is, what's not going to change over the next 10 years, right? Because you can build a business strategy around what's not going to change, right? And so Jeff Bezos describes it as, are people going to want good prices? Yes. Are they going to want large selection? Yes. Are they going to want their product quickly? Yes. So I can build around those things. The rest are just tactics. Right. So when you're building your business, instead of asking what's changing, right, you anchor it in what's going to be the same tomorrow and 10 years from now.
Exactly. And that was the basis for the book, right? we didn't want to focus in on shiny new objects. You know, there's a million people putting out videos and books every day about, you know, Chat GPT, and that's the next big phase. And yeah, it's going to have a huge impact. At the end of the day, it's just about creating more content, which is great. Like, fine. It's still going to have to be.
I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to make a prediction. Nobody's going to give Marco, I'll keep it clean, okay? About Chat GPT a year from now. Okay. There will be other types of products like that. Okay. There will be other interfaces. There will be AI-driven tools. But right now, people are so excited by it that I can almost guarantee you that the excitement itself is what will burn it out, because it's not quite ready yet. And so people are so excited that they're already trying to say, well, we're going to depend on it. People are saying, well, we can create a content strategy around it. We can do this. We can. No, you can't. It's okay, right? It's reasonable. It's not good content, right? It's not writing good content. It's writing acceptable content. Okay. And acceptable is, I guess it's acceptable, but the excitement that people have around it is the absolute proof that right now that it can't live up to it. And therefore, it'll disappoint. It won't continue to do this. I know, you know, my wife works for a corporation. She works in their marketing, and I know they've set up a meeting for the next few days about Chat GPT and the influence it's going to have on their marketing. Okay, and so that's how I know that it's mostly bullshit. Right? When people are having meetings about, like, you know what? If it was something that was really ready, okay, it wouldn't have been released like that, and people would have been just the quiet people would have been making money with it, and then you would have heard, oh, we're already making money with it. We know how to make money with it. If you're having meetings about making money with ChatGPT, guess what? You're not going to do it. It's not ready yet.
And don't get me wrong, if you want to produce average stuff, that it's okay. Like there's some unique cases where you can do some good stuff. I mean, I know someone who wrote a book with it. I'm not saying you're not going to be able to do certain things with it. Okay,
or that we won't use it for a first draft, or that we.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, hold on. I'll admit we had a press release about the book coming out and it being selected as the BookBub featured deal of the day, which only about 15% of books ever do. And that first draft of the press release was written based on the prompts that we gave it into ChatGPT, but then it required some editing. Okay, and it's fine. Like it took me minutes as opposed to a couple of hours to write, and it's a great use case. But it comes down to the same thing, Marco. Did you watch the World Cup along with millions of others who watched the World Cup? Okay. If you look at someone like Messi, okay, you look at any elite athlete in every sport, are they all doing the same exact thing? They run up and down the field. They change directions. They pass the ball. They move to the right spot. But there's a difference between those who are elite, that top 1%, everybody else who's at the professional level, and then college, amateur, blah, 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 it breaks apart. What do the elite do so much better? And I mean, I know from my friend Dennis Yu, for example, right? He talked about he watched Steph Curry, the basketball player, right, practice. And he can shoot from all over the court. He went viral again this year for shooting from like the opposite side of the court, just shooting the shots in the basket. How? Because he spends his time every day, hours and hours, where people are sleeping and not paying attention on the most fundamental, boring, basic thing. My friend Alan Stein, he's a performance coach. He wrote the book Raise Your Game. Same thing. He went to watch Kobe Bryant practice. He was there an hour before he got there. All they do is over and over till it's flawless. And you think about this from a startup perspective, okay? Because we've consulted to countless startups over the years. Who are the best startups? Every day they build. Every day they communicate well. Every day they build trust. Every day it's the same fundamental principles that they have to do. They pay attention to their cash flow. If you're not paying attention to these things, okay, these fundamentals, you can't be elite. And I think that's the part that most people absolutely miss in business. And when we go into consult, it's usually never something major catastrophic in their thinking. It's they forgot something simple. And I'll give you a simple example from Google, okay? Just super simple. We went, and in some pages they would talk about how the lowest cost of an ad was 25 cents, and in other places they put somewhere else, and we just said, hey, you have to be consistent in your message. That accounted for a significant lift. It doesn't have to be rocket science. It's back to fundamentals. Just like great cooking, by the way, too.
Yep. There's a guy that Jeffrey. I don't know if you remind Jeffrey when we were at Madrid. There was this Brazilian guy, the SEO expert, that he says since then he didn't change his mind. Advanced SEO, it's basic SEO.
Yes.
Because, and we saw this 2 years ago.
In fact, the best SEO, right? The best search engine optimization is simply having really good content that answers the questions the way that your audience is thinking about it. If you think you have the question answered, ask the question differently. Ask how, ask why, ask what. It may be the same concept. You write it several times and you'll know. Now, the rest of SEO is the tactics, right? Is all the technical aspects, right, of what a search engine can read, can't read, how it covers it. But the bottom line is that first you have to have the content that the searcher is looking for. Why? Because the search engine makes their money by delivering the very best content to that audience. So they're looking for that, right? And it's in their interest to do that. So fundamental, right? Now, there's hundreds of things that I could start writing and saying, okay, now I can complicate that with technical SEO, with everything from the length of your sentences to, right, there's lots of technical things that we can say, but that's the basic premise, right? Are you actually answering the question?
So, Jeffrey, I went back and I had to pull this up, and the video's not there anymore for some reason. I'll have to figure out why.
5 R's.
The 5 R's at the end of a search engine SES conference, I met up with Ralph Wilson, who I mentioned earlier, right? One of the first internet marketing newsletters, and it was. I mean, this is before 2011, because on my website I have the video listed from 2011. Same 5 principles have lasted from SEO from when we first started in 1994, 95 till today. 1, be relevant. 2, build your reputation. 3, be remarkable, so people want to share it. 4, be readable. And then 5, be of sufficient reach. So you don't want to necessarily talk to a small audience. You want to talk to larger and larger audience. 5 R's. That's it. Never changed.
Yep. It's easy and it's really important. And this will bring us back to trust. So
it always
let's
comes
cover
back
this.
to trust because there's no money without trust.
Absolutely.
Well, not only that, we all have a big passion for food, okay? And I'm going to tell you, if you want greatest lessons in marketing and in entrepreneurship, watch Kitchen Nightmares. Watch Gordon Ramsay. Watch him yell like crazy at these chefs. Why did these restaurants start failing? Okay, because when the entrepreneur first started, they were very passionate about opening up their business and serving their food and all that. But then you go back and he goes to their kitchens, and how many of them have stopped cleaning? And they're disgusting. You wouldn't even want it. Like, if you knew how bad it was, you would never eat the food there. They don't buy fresh ingredients anymore, right? Again, these are just fundamentals of good quality food. They don't change items in the menu. They've kept it there even though nobody's ordered, this item for 6 years. They're still going to keep it there. This is not magical. It's just that we get, as humans, this is human nature. We get bored at the fundamental things, but the fundamental things is where excellence lives.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, want to add something?
How can I top that?
You could say the same thing in Spanish for everybody.
No, thank you. What would be remarkable is if I could say it in Portuguese.
Yes, you can try it.
And Bryan and I are candidates for. In fact, our second cousin has already achieved it. Has already gotten Portuguese citizenship. Bryan and I have applied, as well as several of our other cousins, and so hopefully we'll have that sometime this year or next year, and then we'll have to come visit you, Marco. Well, you'll have to show me where to get the little custard tarts that I've heard so much about.
Okay, no problem.
You know what I'm talking about, right? What is it? Nata?
Yes. And there's this thing.
Hold on. By the way, there's a lesson right there. Did you miss that? See, you created enough trust, and you pointed something that was remarkable to Jeffrey, that he remembered that, and it's going to create this word of mouth experience. Okay.
Absolutely.
But no. These are world famous. These little custard tarts.
I get it.
Lisbon is world famous for making custard tarts.
But
I'm not a fan of custard. I wouldn't have remembered that. That's the difference.
Let me share one secret with you, because this is important. Okay, this is important.
This is important.
And this is also something important about the story. And we can talk about this in a while, because before we need to talk about networking. But the thing is, once I was there, and because if you look at both cakes, they look the same or almost the same. There's pastel de nata, which is kind of broader, and then there's pastel de Belém, which is dedicated to the place where they have the store and also where they make them, which is a little, how can I say, place inside Lisbon. It's close to the river. It's a beautiful, if you Google it, Belém in Lisbon, it's an amazing site. Okay, so once I was there, and I think someone called me, and I said, look, I'm here in Lisbon, Belém, eating some pastéis de nata. Then the waiters looked at me like those killing eyes, like, you just made a scene. Because here it's pastéis de Belém. They have huge queue lines waiting to buy these pastéis de Belém. I think that Jay Bear already was there, because he loves Lisbon as well, and Portugal. And they are really nice. They are really tasty. But here, close to where I live, in the town where I live, we have another really awesome cake. Call it Bola de Berlim, translated Berlin Ball. Maybe sound a little bit awkward.
Less appealing, yes.
It looks even a little bit awkward, but it's really tasty. I don't know if you ever heard about Brazilian writer Jorge Amado. Was one of the biggest writers in Brazil. He was a close friend to the former owner of that bakery. And even, for instance, the main room, which is not as main, it's a small room, but it's the main room there, that old-fashioned cafe. and the name of the room is Jorge Amado Zeligatai, which was his wife by those time. Both of them passed away, even the bakery owner. But the thing is, and if you ask about Vienna cake, there you go. Bolas de Berlim do Notário. So this is how this consistency. But now I want to cover this important thing, which is the networking and knowing the right people. And if even though that for that moment that person it's not the right one, he can introduce, he can link it to the right one, and also with the knowledge. And this is something nice as well. I'm not talking about this sneaky thing about picking brains, because I'm completely against this strategy. But when you have, and I love networking, is it important to succeed in this entrepreneur world?
Yes, but it's the opposite of picking the brains. So what you need to be thinking, okay, and it's strange because Bryan, I mentioned we've started a startup in a different industry, right, in this home services industry, and people have been a little bit surprised. So here's the thing, like you talked about famous, like people know us in internet marketing, they know us, okay, in there they don't necessarily know us, okay, and so we've approached people and offered them help and given them advice and helped them without asking for anything. And they're always kind of surprised. Like we've actually had more than one big influencer say, "What do you want?" And the answer was, "I'm not even if I wanted something, I'm not ready to ask you because our product is still in development. We do this, we do that. We couldn't handle like I couldn't handle the business that one of those big influencers could actually bring." And I said, I want to be your friend. And he was like, "Oh." He says, "Well, you've done that." I said, "Well, then good. Then I've done a good job." I said, when I ask you for something, it may not even be the right moment. And when I'm ready to ask you, I may not even need it, right? We may have achieved it a different way. I don't want anything. I want to see how I can help. I'm trying to become a friend. And so we've had over the years people approach us with that mindset, and we've been really well disposed towards helping them.
Well,
right. So the idea is, don't think about what people can do for you, right? If you can do something valuable for other people, go do that. That's how you network. That's how you actually make the connections that matter.
And Marco, it comes back to one of the points we make in the book. You are the people you hang around, right? They say you're a mix of the 5 people you hang around the most. This is why your spouse is so important to where you're going to be in life. And it's if you want to change your path, you need to change a little bit of yourself. You need to find ways to, as I mentioned earlier, serve your community, and your community can be your mentors, right? Find ways to bring value to them first, and they may be able to bring value to you later on. And as I said, we've gained greatly by our relationship with Roy Williams, and everything that he's accomplished with the Wizard Academy. We've certainly accomplished amazing things, but what they're doing there is just it's unreal. Just as a single point of reference, on their campus there is a free wedding chapel called Chapel Dulcinea. Okay, big fascination. It's also one of the largest collections of artwork of Don Quixote in the world. is on the campus. And there are over 1,000 couples every year that fly into Austin, go to the Wizard Academy, and get married there for free. For free. And they have such amazing recollections. And randomly, I'll find people who say, "Oh, I was just there for what," and they just love the place. And it's like, we've obviously benefited from our relationship with Roy Williams, right? And everything that he's accomplished. It's helped us raise what we think we could do. And I think that's why it's so important to have such a great network. It's not hard to reach out to people. Like, it's easy. Like, we were shocked the first time we picked up the phone and tried to get Roy. It was like, yeah, he was giving a free public seminar. They said, you can come down. We didn't have the money. We found a way. Jeffrey went down, and it's changed the course of our career.
But even there, we were going well above what we thought was the level of influence that we had, and we wanted to meet Roy. Roy was nice enough. So we attended the 3rd Wizard Academy class. Okay. 3rd ever, right? Yeah, just started it. And what was interesting was that we didn't have money for it. But Roy was gentlemanly enough, right? He was just a gentleman, because he said he accepted our offer of help on his website. Now, we know he never did anything, but he never intended to do anything. He wanted to give us away. Since we had offered, since we extended ourselves, he could then say, oh, yeah, then I can give you this because you're actually like you're paying for it. And we started to create a friendship based on an idea that we weren't just trying to suck from him, trying to take his influence, right. This is the most important thing that we could tell people who are trying to build networks, right? Is focus on what you can do for others, and what they can do for you will come afterwards.
Absolutely. Good point. Good point. And I know that you want to cover this because I can see in your eyes. And I love this as well. Consistency. It's key. I don't know, maybe when I started 1 year after started my live streaming journey, live talking about why we should be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's time for you to answer to that question.
It comes back to what we said before. It's small little habits. We're the first days of the new year. People, have all these resolutions. They want to become successful. They want to lose weight. They want to start a new hobby, whatever it is. The one thing I've learned, and I always tell people, I've learned so much more about optimization, an optimization of life, right? Forget about the 20 years we spent, plus, working with businesses and doing that. I learned a ton of the lessons when I lost 100 pounds. So right after we left our agency, in 16 months, I ended up losing 100 pounds. I said, that taught me so much. And then I have my son who wants to become eventually a professional athlete. He's now going to be a collegiate athlete next year. And the point is, it's every day you've got to win the little things. It's easy to say, okay, I'm not going to do it today. Okay. But same thing. I woke up early this morning, edited some video, made sure I got my water in. That's a really important thing. Got out to the post office early, went for a long walk with my dog. Like, make my bed. All these little things are little things. I say, okay, check mark. I've accomplished my day. And here I am.
I don't believe he made his bed, but that's okay.
I did. But, here it is, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I've accomplished more than most people will in a full day. And I already feel like I won. So now I can say, hey, I can either push and do something else, which I probably will, but I can also say, hey, I've already accomplished a ton today. Okay. And I could be satisfied and enjoy the rest of my day knowing that I succeeded. And I think so many people miss that point, that if you want to have number one thing that you should focus on consistency is joy. Find joy in your life, okay? And just know what it is. And people struggle to even figure that out. If you start optimizing those small things, right? Because you don't lose 100 pounds like that. How do you lose 100 pounds? 1 pound at a time, 1 kilo at a time. How do you lose that one pound, that 1 kilo? Every meal that you make the right choices on, right? Every day you make the decision to go out and exercise, and maybe you have to work a little bit harder today than you did yesterday. But it's like the bracelet I've been wearing for years, okay? It says, be better today than you were yesterday. And that's all you have to focus on. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. That's what consistency is about for me.
Perfect. Jeffrey.
Yeah. So you want me to say something about consistency? I'm going to say something about joy, which I think is more important. People want to find their passion, and the thing is that I'm trying to think about whether this is just years of experience, right? In other words, whether I'm being old, or whether if I had known this when I was younger, it would have been as useful. Okay, but um, don't look for happiness. Don't look for something that you're passionate about. Decide and make a commitment to something, and you will become passionate. Don't wait for something to make you happy. Happiness doesn't come from anything, right? Decide to be happy, right? And again, unless there's some sort of uh, chemical reason or terrible life circumstance. No, I mean, these things happen, but if you decide to be happy, you can be happy. Go enjoy. These are conscious choices, right? So the consistency is decide what you're going to do and go do it, right? That is how you build your passion, right? Passion isn't about the easy conquest, right? Passion is about the hard fought. Um, Boy, this is hard. And if you look at passion, which has the romantic concept to it, right? Um, the best stories are always about overcoming terrible hardships, right? That's the actual part that passion does. It's
Or
not
even
right. It's
or even
easy
Don
to be
Quixote, Jeffrey,
Yes,
right?
it's easy to be in love, right, with the bright shiny object, right? But fall in love with making your life better, right? Fall in love with making yourself better, right? And then that will build. So again, like I said, I don't know if I sound like I'm 90 years old there, because I'm not, right? But I'm hoping that the consistency is about what's consistent in your head as much as in your body.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And these days we are that's a challenge by these days because we see so many people trying to sell us the idea of what is being happy. And the thing is, I think what they are building is completely the opposite because they are trying to sell us that we should have a Ferrari, uh, an amazing house, lots of dollars in the bank, and the thing is, happiness comes in so many different dresses that we can't kind of tell to someone else, look, this is happiness, this is success, this is what you should be.
What one of my
I've been
favorite
happy. I've been happy with $3,000 a month. I've been happy with $13,000 a month. I've been happy with $30,000 a month. And I can tell you that there's no difference in the quality of the happy. None. Right? It's all the same happy.
Yep. It's one of my favorite little parts of the story. If you remember, Marco, where Ricky comes up to a guy who sells shaved ice, right? And one of the guys are telling him about the gentleman who's selling the shaved ice, and it's like that gentleman. He's working hard every day, pushing around his cart with ice, trying to make a dollar here, a dollar there, but he's happy. He's happy with what he's doing for his family, right? That's important. He always has a smile on. He always tries to impact other people when he meets them. It's not hard to be happy. You just have to work at finding the right thing for you. And all
Absolutely.
we want to do is give people some tools.
That's it.
Absolutely. And talking about tools, I think there's a book, The Rice and Beans Millionaire, which is an amazing tool. Give, okay, both of us, of you, two reasons. So at the end, they will be four. Why this book? It's a really nice tool to become more happy, more entrepreneur as well.
I'll let Bryan go first.
So I'll start with one. I wrote it because I wanted to impact first my children, okay? And my kids range from 13 to 21. They're beginning their life journeys, they're beginning their fortune. And I wanted to give the readers, the audience, right, my community, the same advice I give my kids, okay? And I didn't want to put it in a volume that thick because while I may have years and years of experience, if I can explain it simply to where you can read it in about an hour, I know everybody's busy, everybody's distracted, everybody's attention's everywhere. Every chapter, there's a lesson. You can finish it in about 3 minutes. So if you want to take it to the bathroom, you want to take it to the beach, it's easy. Okay. You can find
Yes,
joy.
it,
And first of all, knowing, and one of my favorite things about post this past week have been people saying, I read my first book of the year because it's so quick and easy to read. Okay. And
yes,
that's great.
it's really,
Small
yep,
habits.
absolutely.
The second one is it's based on true stories. So while it's a fictional story, you may not recognize every character, but there are real people and real stories that you will recognize in the book. People like Peter Shankman and Amanda Russell, and there's tons of them. We weaved in the reality with the fiction so that everybody can see themselves in that book and find that. I don't care if you're a 12-year-old making over 10 grand a month, or you're a senior citizen, or anywhere in between, whether you're male or female, whether you're white, African American, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. You all can have the freedom you want in life if you choose to take the steps.
Absolutely.
So I have to get two more reasons, right? Well,
Yeah,
one is because Marco liked the book. Okay.
absolutely.
And so if Marco liked the book, and he's an influencer, you'll
I mean,
probably like the book. But I think that the last one is actually more interesting. So Bryan said before we've published 8 books. Okay. Although they've been collaborations, there's been different leadership on each book, right? So I could say that Waiting for Your Cat to Bark had much more of my influence than this book, right? Or that Be Like Amazon, okay, that I was very, very, very much involved. In this book, this is very much a book from Bryan, and I say that in the following sense. I collaborated with him. I helped him. The geekiest chapter in the book, which is about financial statements. Yeah. I'm sorry. That's me. But this is something that Bryan did from the heart. So I, part of the reason why I'm wearing a hat today is because I'm undergoing chemotherapy. I'm having some treatment for cancer is going very well. I should be well. I haven't told this publicly to people, but I want to say this is the book that comes from my brother's heart, right? This comes, like he said, for his children. That's not a small thing. This is the book that he felt so important to share, right? That he worked hard enough to make it really simple. Now, if you go to something like Waiting for Your Cat to Bark, this book is the most complicated book you'll ever see. Like seriously, okay? I remember Roy Williams saying to me, this is like 9 books. You should have made 9 books, and then it would have been more readable. Okay? It's a really good book, but it's dense. It really, we felt like we had so much to say, and we said it all. Okay? In here, this was the things that came from Bryan's heart as the most important things that he wanted to say if he could only spend an hour with you. Okay. And so I'm going to say, I think that's a reason to do it, right? If you wanted a mentor, if you wanted to understand from somebody who's had a certain level of success, That's why you should read this book.
Great. Great. I'm just going to add two things, because if this is something that you're saying to your son, maybe this is really important. And the second thing was, it's a funny story. I don't know if this is true, but it makes sense to me. Some time ago, someone asked to Seth Godin to write something about a given topic. And he gave him a kind of a good deadline. And then once the time is arrived, and Seth Godin just sent him a couple of lines. And he said, "Just this?" And Seth Godin replied, "I had time to think about it, so I made this short."
Yes. And by the way, the story is originally ascribed to Mark Twain. Okay. But it actually is older than that. Okay. Again, yes, it's easy to vomit everything, right?
Absolutely.
The essence, that's really hard. So, yeah, this is something that is short, and I think Bryan really gave this his all.
Yeah. Not only that, one of the most impactful compliments that I've had when we first started, sharing drafts of the book, and I'd send it to some entrepreneurs, like, you'd be surprised who they were, but people who've sold companies for over $100 million. Over and over again, what I heard from all of them was, "I can't wait to give this to my son, my daughter, to read." That they felt it was valuable enough, all the lessons that they've learned throughout their success, that this little book,
or the people who said
that,
right, you know what? There are people who come to me, they ask me for money. I'm going to go send them to go read the book before they talk to me about
it. Yes.
Right.
And that to me was such great validation, because, we mapped out all the first principles we wanted to get there. And I think we covered probably about 95% of them. There's probably a couple stories we probably could have included. And you talked about Be Like Amazon. This probably comes, like, obviously before Be Like Amazon. There's probably another part of the journey that maybe happens in between, and then comes Be Like Amazon. But we've got to start at those fundamentals, right? Before we can go to intermediate, and then we can go to advanced.
Absolutely.
Right? But it's all principles that everybody can take advantage of, and that's the whole point.
And I think in most of the cases, by just keeping the principles, you don't need to go to up in the ladder, because sometimes the principles, they are not so well covered that we think too much. Oh, we need to be there, and we don't have the basic covered.
Gotta get some rice and beans.
Absolutely. So, dear friends, how people can find you?
Wow, we're not hard to find.
Just Google us pretty much anywhere in social media. I've even taken the step to start a TikTok channel for this, because obviously book talk is another strategy for selling books today, right?
I think so. Twitter, Facebook, everything, LinkedIn. However, if you want to find us easy, just go to buyerlegends.com.
Okay.
Right, buyerlegends.com. That was actually our first short book, was Buyer Legends. Right, with this strategy of having books that you could read in under 90 minutes started with Buyer Legends, then went to Be Like Amazon, and then Rice and Beans Millionaire. So buyerlegends.com is the name of our company. You can find us there. You can reach out to us, but really we're easy to find. And we're always happy to hear from people.
Well, perfect. Mr. Jeffrey and Bryan, thank you so much for joining me today. It was an amazing conversation. Look forward to...
Our pleasure.
We can do two things. One, come with another book so I can bring you back, or we can talk about another book in the future.
Or maybe next time it'll be when we're in Portugal and we can just all be live together.
That would be even better with pastel
Or
de
we can do
Belém,
something before that. So
bola de
um,
Berlim. That would be great. Thank you so much. It was a really insightful conversation. I think I need to recap everything that I've learned today because it's amazing. Thank you so much. Wish you all the best with this book and with everything else, of course. And as I said, looking forward to having another or even more conversation with both of you. Okay.
perfect. Thank
Wish
Thank
you,
you
you
so
Marco.
much.
Thank you.
nice year. And for those of you who are watching the live show, thank you so much. If you know someone that may need this book, and okay, of course, Christmas, it's already gone, but let me share a secret with you. Our neighbors, Spanish people, they tend to give the presents in the 5th of January because it's the day of the wise kings. So this could be an idea for you to to send this book to someone.
And I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we're going to translate this one into Spanish because be like Amazon actually exists in Spanish. We have a Spanish version of the book. Um, we may or may not. The funny thing is that what we found was that most of the people who spoke Spanish read it in English.
Makes sense. Yes. By these
Um,
days, yes.
Yeah.
right. And,
Even
and Marco, I didn't even know that you spoke English. So
I do. Well, let me share this with you. When we had our first conversation live, I'm not talking about our the live
right.
show because the first conversation was actually live in Madrid. But my English, I didn't think it was as good as it is right now because after almost 2 years broadcasting on Amazon, around 2 hours each show, which you need to talk all by yourself. You should, okay, now it's like throwing you to a really deep pool and now you need to swim. So I think I developed a little bit my English. Probably next year it will be even better. That's how things are. And I think by these days, if you want to succeed, you need to learn. I don't think because some people they say, oh, you need to speak a, a second language. For me, a second language by these days it's kind of you need to. It's not kind of
Well, I think
something
English
that you should.
is English is your third language. Am I correct?
Yes. Well, the French it's somewhere
Okay.
over there as well because Portuguese people, my parents, they were immigrants in France, as like lots of people in the place where I live. So I have family in Paris, and I speak a little French as well. But yes, Portuguese, Spanish, English, and French, and a little bit Italian as well, because I'm curious, and a good thing for me to learn languages is listening to music because it's a nice way, at least for me, to learn. So that's the thing.
I learned by watching Netflix. It's so funny. I mean, um,
Yes, it's good as well.
before I visited Rome, I
Mhm.
remember that I looked for shows in Italian, right, on Netflix, and I just got my ear accustomed to it. And I won't tell you that I spoke, right? I mean, like you know,
Yeah, but
like
yes,
like everything else, it's mostly Spanish with a few extra words thrown in.
yes,
But
yes.
right, but I was able to really understand. I got my ear used to it, and
Yep.
so I still listen to. I still watch shows in Russian, and again, my Russian isn't fluent anymore, but my understanding for shows and movies, no problem. And so you have to be able to listen for it. And I the funny thing is I have a hard time watching the Spanish shows with subtitles. Right? So my wife doesn't speak Spanish, and it's very annoying to read subtitles when they're wrong.
Yep.
Right? You know what I'm saying, right? Because they're not really perfect. And so I'm sitting there saying, I wouldn't have translated it that way. So
Indeed. So after this language small talk, time to finish. Thank you so much. Maybe I will be live later on Amazon. Stay tuned. Bye bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.